Welcome back to the Life of Tashmia. I'm Tash. Today's solo episode was actually inspired by a recent chance meet at a kink event that I went to. I had someone who's been following me, I think just for like a month or two, they found me and they said, "Can I show you something?" And I was like, please don't let it be a dick pic. Because he had his phone out and he went into his phone and there was a folder that said Tash Me as well on it. And then he clicked on the folder and inside it had learnings. And he had written down everything that he had learnt from following me, like in a list. And I was just like so shocked and in awe, and it was so sweet. And I was just kind of quickly running my eyes down the list. And I happened to notice that number 76 or something was psilocybin. And I thought, oh, okay, I've actually dropped that in a few things now, in a few episodes or things I've talked about, but I've actually never gone into really my experiences and I guess how I feel of my relationship with psilocybin. So I thought that's what I would do this solo on. So my first experience is really with, it's mushrooms. For those who don't know what psilocybin is, psilocybin is the psychedelic element inside of mushrooms. And so my first experience really with mushrooms was normally in nature with friends. It might be like a weekend away where we'd, take a not a microdose quantity, but not a macrodose quantity, just like something in the middle where you feel like happy and floaty and really connected to nature and with your friends and just have a really nice experience. And, I did this on and off, not that often, but for me, it was always really nice time, a bit of fun, nothing too serious. And then my next really way I used them in my life was, if you have listened about my episode about the passing of my mother, I was very open about the fact that I struggled for a little while with using drugs, and eventually I wanted to stop that. And so I actually used microdosing with mushrooms to help me. And I did something called the statement stack. So you can Google this up, but basically it is using microdosing of mushrooms. So you take a very small quantity. I'm not going to prescribe any quantities in this for people because it's very individual. You mix it also with lion's mane and B3, and you do this 4 mornings on and then 3 mornings off. You repeat it for 4 weeks. Then you can take a 2 to 4 week break, and then you can start the protocol again. It's kind of like a natural antidepressant. It just kind of gives you a bit of a lift. It kind of got popular, microdosing did, in the Silicon Valley era, or still. People were using it to be in the tech startup space, to be really creative and stuff. The low dosages, you don't get any psychedelic effects, but as I said, it's just a bit of a mood boost. And that actually really helped me as I was kind of rebalancing my body and my hormones and all the chemicals in my brains after long-term drug abuse. So I really view psychedelics as plant medicine. I don't view them as drugs. This is gaining more popularity. Many countries now have it legal. Unfortunately, Australia is still very behind on that, although I'm sure we will catch up at some point. So what happened was as I said, I had got clean basically post, not dealing with my mother's passing very well. And I was doing a lot of therapy. My therapist, who I've seen for 8-9 years, and she recommended that maybe I wanted to try a psilocybin journey. Now, she is actually trained in psilocybin and ketamine therapy. She went to America and actually got properly trained in it. So it's not like this is just done with someone randomly. It's someone that's known me for a very long time. She also mentioned that she would not have suggested this until I was clean and was in the right headspace. And so I was clean, and I had been for quite a few months before she even mentioned this. And when you decide to do a journey, it's not like you wake up one morning, you're like, I think I'll do a journey today. you've got to prepare for it. So once we decided that I was going to work towards doing it, we started the preparation, which was in our sessions. That was talking about really getting my head in the right space to prepare for it. That's also looking at what you want your intentions to be. And also the way it kind of works is the more work you've done on your mind and the more open you are, one, the high dose you're going to have to take because it's macrodosing, so you're taking high dose of psilocybin, but also you're going to get probably a lot more out of it because you need to open up, you need to surrender to what's happening. If you close off, to be honest, I'm not sure exactly what happens if you're very closed off, but you're not going to get as much out of it, that's for sure. So my intentions for my first journey were pretty simple. It was about the passing of my mother and accepting that and getting my life back together, I guess, after that. And I also wanted to address some control issues I had, which saying that now, I mean, to be honest, I even forgot that was that was one of my intentions from my first journey because it's so not who I am anymore. The week before the journey, you have to do a bit of prep, things like not to eat meat, no spicy food, try to eat plain foods. The one that my therapist told me was going to be the hardest for me, she's like, look, this one's probably going to be really difficult. And I'm like, what's going to be difficult? She's like, no orgasms with people or by yourself. And I was like, for a week. I was like, okay, which sounds easy, but actually is quite difficult. The day of the actual journey, you're told to eat like a really light breakfast, early on, and then fast for the rest of the day. You can have like water, but, a really light breakfast, and then you want your stomach clean. The reason why they do that, there's a few reasons. There's a reason to do mind-wise. You're trying to also that week reduce stress, get good sleep, not go out, things like that. But also psilocybin is especially for me, I get a bit of a reaction in my stomach. You feel quite queasy. And so you're trying to like basically give your stomach a bit of a better chance to not to interact with the plant medicine, and also to have it absorb the best is to have an empty stomach. So that's why you do that kind of preparation. You can also take things in with you. I took a photo of my mum because that was my main intention. I took a favorite blanket. I took this necklace because it's got my mother's ring on it that I wear on my neck, which is close to my heart. I took like electrolytes. I took my daughter's favorite teddy bear because I wanted her in there with me. And then you take a playlist that we compiled together, me and my therapist. Enough for 6 hours you've got to have on there, and then like a Bluetooth speaker. And of course I had to bring my mushrooms in the dose that we had decided I was going to take. It was funny because I was really excited. Like we had planned it, I think 2 or 3 months ahead of when I actually did it. Actually, it might have been 4 months. It was a bit longer. And so you're really excited for a long time. And I'm someone who I love doing self-work and exploring different modalities. But as you're getting closer and closer to the day, I was actually getting really nervous. And I spoke to my therapist a couple of days before, and I'm like, it's weird. Like I'm excited, but I can feel I'm nervous. And she said, that's really normal. It's because your subconscious is getting nervous about what's going to come out. So the day arrived. As I said, I had my really nice light breakfast. It was about 4 p.m. when I got to my therapist's house, so we were going to perform the ceremony. She'd cleansed her house twice with sage, and then we did a little spiritual ceremony together because we are both what we consider people who work with energy. We're both people who are very spiritual, and we're both people who facilitate healing in others. She called upon spiritual guides to help and guide me in this journey. I called in my own ones as well. Then I consumed the mushrooms, which is probably the worst part of the whole experience because I literally, you have quite a large quantity and you're just eating them one after the other. Thank God I had my electrolytes and water next to me to sip it and wash it down. But I do not like the taste of mushrooms at all. And not pleasant. The second time I did it, I actually put it with some hot water. I crushed them up and put it with hot water, and that for me worked better. So about 20 to 40 minutes later, you start to feel the effects. At this point, we moved into the room where there was a bed for me. The music playlist was on and my objects are in that room that I wanted, and I lay down. As I said, I don't feel well coming up on mushrooms. Normally, that's not uncommon. Like you just feel a bit sick. And I was a little also nervous about that because I thought the higher quantity I take, does that mean I'm going to be even more unwell? Which doesn't actually correlate. But I did get body shakes, like violent body shakes. Like you're freezing cold or something like that. And I had heaps of blankets and I don't think I was actually cold. I just couldn't stop shaking. And it really was feeling like your body fighting the medicine, your body fighting what was about to come. And I just had to really just try and relax into it and accept it. And eventually I was going from just shaking to shaking and it'd stop. Then I'd shake a bit and then it'd stop. And then eventually it stopped. And then for me, it was kind of like I was going in and out of like a dreamlike state. And I would see like visuals. I'd be presented with different like visuals. I described it as putting a puzzle together. So I'd get like all these puzzle pieces and visuals or clips of things. And then I'd like get it. And I'd be like, aha. It was like aha moment. Like, I get it now. Like, this is what it was showing me. And like, that was one of the puzzles. And then I did like 16 puzzles during this journey. I was shown so much in that journey. Like I went in with two intentions and I got like so much more than that. You remember what happens. I thought like, I was really worried I'd forget everything, but you remember. Also my therapist, she takes notes of anything you say because you can talk as much or as little as you want. It was funny because I remember for the first part of the journey, things were starting to come up for me, but I was trying to be really silent to not disturb my therapist. And then I realized, oh, wait, she's here for me. Like I can talk. And so then I started like speaking things and saying what I was saying. And then she gave me her notes, which are great because in the days afterwards when you're journaling post the journey, it is nice to look back on things that you said. Even though you remember it, there might be some things that you might have said in a particular way. So I felt extremely relaxed eventually and almost I thought I was going to fall asleep. And I said to my therapist, I'm like, do people just like fall asleep in this and that's it? And she's like, no, you're not going to fall asleep. And I was like, I wish I felt like this every time when I go to bed at night. The first thing that came up for me was visuals of two elements. And the two elements was go with the flow and control. And I guess they're the two elements that were inside of me. And at first I remember they were dancing. And then they were in like a war with each other. But I said, I can't really tell which one's winning. And then I remember seeing a child peeping around a corner. And then I was taken into my family home for a while. But that was one of the puzzle pieces that I didn't solve. And it's the only one I didn't solve. And it's something that's come up since. But if something comes up for you and they say you're stuck on it, don't force it. It might not be ready. It might be something else. Like maybe it doesn't need to come up right then. So I just kind of like acknowledged it and I kind of let it go. I then opened my eyes and I was looking at my mother's photo that we had placed in the room on the cabinet. And I was really in my head for a while. I wasn't speaking a lot. And I just said, it's about me. I get it. And I really saw like all the struggles that I had been having for the last 2 years was about me. And I saw my mother enter the spiritual world in that vision of that segment of my journey. And I joined her in that spiritual world for the rest of my journey. I really understood from that moment that my mother lives inside of me. Like, she's part of the spiritual world, but she's inside of me, and that she was inside of my daughter. And I really felt it's an incredible feeling. It's very hard to explain what the spiritual world feels like unless you're in it, but it is the most amazing feeling. And from that moment, you realize there's nothing to fear. And I had, and this came into the journey as well, I had a fear of infinity since being a child. Like, even a few years ago, I would be like up at night just like tripping out over the concept of infinity and things never ending. And it would really freak the shit out of me, even as an adult. And from this journey and being in that spiritual world, I no longer feel that. I no longer have that fear, because I realized that this world is the hard part, not the spiritual world. Like, that place is great. And I understood that, you know, we really are spiritual beings just in a physical experience. And I would look at the cabinet next to me in the room, and I felt part of that cabinet. Like, me and that cabinet were no different. And I know a lot of people would think, like, how the fuck are you not different from a cabinet? But you feel it. You're all just little particles together in the universe. Anyway, as I said, that from what I experienced there, I saw the transformation of my relationship with my mom from the physical to the spiritual. And that feeling has never left me since I did that journey. I was stuck in the physical relationship with my mother, and I didn't know how to transfer that to the spiritual world. And this journey did that for me. And it was life-changing. I saw elements about my mother being the nurturer, because she was a very strong nurturer, and I saw that now that had been passed on to me. I saw the strength of my mother was now inside of me. And the fact that I'm able to hold space for people in what I do and my purpose in this life has come from that strength from my mother that is now living inside of me. I was also struggling with the feeling of not feeling home. I don't know how many people can relate to that feeling, but to me, home was sitting on my mother's bed in her bedroom while she ironed and watched Law and Order. I used to go over to the house, like her house, flop down on her bed. Like, if I had a bad day, I was tired or whatever, or I didn't have to think. Like, I felt so at peace. And I used to say to my therapist, like, I just don't think I will ever feel that feeling again. And that scares me. And that journey, I realized that wasn't a place. I said that home is inside of me, and that feeling is inside of me, and I just had to find my way back to it. So I went very inwards in your journey. I mean, it's a very inwards experience if you have ever done something like that. It's about yourself. It's about going deep inside yourself. And there was a point where I met myself. Like, literally, I said, hello, nice to meet you. And it was such not a bizarre feeling. It felt really good. It felt really good to meet myself. And then actually for a few months after the journey, I decided to date myself, where I would just like take myself to the park and meditate, or, you know, just do things just me and like date myself. And because I was introduced to myself during that journey, and I was exploring this part of myself that I didn't really know before. I wasn't as attached to it. I wasn't as connected with it. So during the journey, you are kind of going in and out. Well, I was. So I'd kind of have like my puzzle pieces. Then I'd put it together, and then I'd go to like the toilet for a toilet break or something. And I mean, my therapist kind of had to help me, because you kind of feel like an 80-year-old. That's what I felt like. You're a bit shaky on your feet. You kind of need to be guided to the bathroom. Then I'd come back, and then I'd go under again. So this kind of kept happening. That was the pattern for my journey. I was kind of going like in and out. And so I'd like had another break, and the next kind of thing that came up for me, this is when more stuff started coming up for me that wasn't really my intentions. I had things come up about my relationship with men, the relationship with my father, boundary issues that I used to have with men. My husband came into it, and one of the things my therapist wrote down that I said that none of those men, including my father, have been strong enough to hold me. My husband is the only one who's ever been strong enough to hold me. I saw things about me and my husband being from past lives together and being each other's soulmates in this life. And I felt very differently about the way I view things, about the way I view my relationships, the way I view myself. And that is a shift. That's not temporary. That's not something that just happened in the journey and then a week later, a month later, it goes. It's still there. That the shifts that you have in that journey change you forever. I had things around my work come up into it. I even had some clients come into my journey, which I really wasn't expecting. That kind of led into realizations about my energy and how powerful my energy was, and the fact that in my work I am a conduit of energy, and I needed to become more aware of my energy. I realized that I was using my energy or viewing my energy as a tap that you just turn on, and as much will come out as you leave that tap on. And in my journey, I had a big realization that it's not an endless tap. It's not like water. It's a precious, finite resource. And I wasted a lot of energy trying to control. So I realized that my energy was not a tap. It's not something that I can just turn on and it's going to gush out forever. It's a finite, precious resource. And I had to be really careful where I use that precious, finite resource, and understanding the concept that I have X amount in my day or in my week or in my month. And if I went through it too fast, it was going to be empty. So I had wasted a lot of energy trying to control things. And I had also allowed a lot of vampires in my life to literally suck the energy out of me. And now I needed to protect it. I was visited by what I now describe as I called her in this journey an ancient temptress. I could see this woman peering. I could see half of her face in this journey. I have since had her in another journey, and she actually came in very strongly just last night in a Kundalini activation session I just did. So I called her the ancient temptress the first time, I think, and I've seen her a few more times now. She's an Egyptian-looking woman. I said, she was very friendly. She was watching me. And then I said that she's inside of me. I channel her. She's the ego. So that's kind of how I viewed her in that journey. But she was visited my journey. And as I said, she's come into another journey and to something again last night. So, I did also be visited by a ghost in my second journey as well. So I am quite open to receiving those things. My mum and my daughter came back into it. The very strong bond between us all, the very strong bond between my mum and my daughter as well. My mum and my daughter were very close. My mother helped raise my daughter. When my daughter was born, I was still studying my MBA, and my mother had a very big part of my daughter very young, and until she was 4 years old, until she passed, they were very close. They look exactly like each other. And I realized that my daughter was still very connected to the spirit world. At that age, my daughter's about to turn 8. And if you talk to people who believe or know a little bit about this stuff, but children are quite connected to the spirit world for quite a while. They do start to lose it around this age, 7, 8, 9. 8's still pushing it a little bit, but my daughter is still in that space. I always tell my daughter to hold on to it for as long as she can. It's so beautiful when they're connected, but obviously society and things, it just gets taken out of them. But at this point, when I did this journey, she was a bit younger than she is now. I could feel it, that my daughter is very much still living in that spirit world. I realized that because I was suffering also from a bit of anxiety at this time. And in the journey, I finally got what anxiety is. And I said, anxiety is from living in the future. I'm living in the future. Depression is living in the past. But I've got anxiety because I keep living in the future. And why you might think, well, if you weren't getting over your mum, weren't you living in the past? My nervousness was that the future was without her, or what that meant to my future. And I kept, even not just things with my mum, but even my business, my work, my family, my house, everything was like, what's happening tomorrow? What's happening next week? What's happening next month? It was never about what's happening now. It was always, when this happens in my business, then, when this happens with the house, then. And I just said, my life is happening right now. And I need to enjoy it now. I need to live in the now. And that is how I let go of control. So that's a bit of a condensed version of like the highlights for me. It finished, I think, about 9:30 p.m. So considering I took the mushrooms about 4, felt the effects around 4:30, it's about, 4 to 5 hours I was under. You feel yourself kind of, I guess, like coming back to reality maybe. You're still a bit spinning. Obviously, you're not like completely straight, or it's not like a stop to it, but you kind of stop. For me, I stopped kind of going in and out, and I felt that I was coming out. I had something light to eat with my therapist. We had a little bit of a chat, but you're quite spacey because this massive thing has just happened to you and you're not processing it all yet. I was just like in awe, but also I could feel this massive shift in my being. My husband came to pick me up. Obviously, you're in no state to drive at that point. I didn't really sleep much that night. I don't really know why, but you don't actually feel sleep deprived the next day. It's funny. I only might have got a couple of hours sleep that night, but I felt okay with it. The next steps is really reintegration. So basically putting yourself back together post the journey and like putting yourself back together into your life now. The next day you have I had a reintegration session with my therapist, and then the next few sessions we continued that. And it's really, talking about things that happened, talking about the shifts, talking about the difference it's made on your life. And one of the biggest things that really shifted into the way of being, obviously I said ever since that journey, that relationship with my mother shifted, and all the problems I was facing around that I haven't felt since. I really integrated that into my being. But I also softened, is the best way I can say to describe it. I really softened as a person. I could be quite hard sometimes, and it kind of took off the edges of me, the hard edges. And I really felt really soft and really in my feminine, and I really loved that. And you also, I think, get a few weeks of like post-mushroom glow where nothing really pisses you off. You just really float through life. I'm not sure if that's just like the side effects of the plant medicine still in your system for a while. But I noticed that with the other journey. It's an understatement to say that it was life-changing for me. And of everyone that I've met that's done similar things, they will say the same thing. It's like 10 years of therapy in like 5 hours or 3 hours or however long it takes you. All of those realizations have never left me since they've happened. I have so much gratitude for that journey. And, I'm someone who believes that everything happens at the exact moment it's meant to happen. I was meant to journey then. I was meant to have those realizations then. I was meant to go through everything that I went to before that to get to that point and then to be where I am now. And it's kind of like once you know, you can't unknow, if you know what I mean. And that's kind of how I feel about my journeys. Like they brought knowing to what my life is, to what my spirit is. And I really wouldn't be who I am now without them. The last journey I did was a couple of months ago, and it was actually really different. And I didn't realize that no two journeys are ever the same. And I actually, while I didn't have expectations about that journey going into it, I actually had expectations about the process, which was interesting, which I didn't actually realize. And I struggled for about the first hour to surrender into the journey, because I was sitting there like ready for the puzzle pieces and they didn't come. And it frustrated me for like an hour, and I really fought to then surrender. And that journey was very different. It was higher dosage because obviously my mind is more open now. And it didn't last as long. I got in and out, I think 2-3 hours. Like they go quite quickly. Maybe it was 3 hours for that one. And I was quite like lucid during it. Like I was having full-on conversations with my therapist during it. I wasn't like in dreamlike, trance-like state. And it was really about entering the next phase of my life, stepping into the wise woman. You know, I said it finally felt like I'd entered being an adult, as strange as that sounds, because obviously I've been an adult for many, many years now. And really seeing myself as the high priestess, the teacher, the facilitator of healing. I've stepped into my power. I've stepped into who I'm meant to be, and it's really incredible. So the work never ends. We don't do journeys and become this almighty being. We always have to be doing work. I still see my therapist. I'm still doing other alternate types of healing sessions. As I said yesterday, I did a Kundalini activation, which was, maybe I'll do another podcast on that another day. That was, again, mind-blowing. Similar type of spirit experience, but very different also in its own right. Because we should be always looking to grow. We should be always looking to evolve, because stagnation to me is death. If you're stagnant, you're dead. Growth is life, and I choose life, and I want to live it fucking deeply. I want to share my strengths. I want to share my wisdom, and I want to share my passion with this world. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too far out for some of you, but that just gives you a little idea of what my experiences were like going through my journeys. So as always, stay kinky.